AI number 157, Burn the Boats by Zvi Mauschowitz, February 26, 2026. Events continue to be fast and furious. This was the first actually stressful week of the year. That was mostly due to issues around Anthropic and the Department of War. This is the big event the news is not picking up, with the Pentagon on the verge of invoking one of two extreme options that would both be extremely damaging to national security, and that would potentially endanger our republic. The Post has details, and the first section here has a few additional notes. Also stressful for many was the impact of Citrini's AI scenario, where it is 2028 and AI agents are sufficiently capable to disrupt the whole economy, but this turns out to be bearish for stocks. People freaked out enough about this that it seems to have directly impacted the stock market, although most stocks other than the credit card companies seem to have bounced back. Of course, in a scenario like that, we probably all die and definitely the world transforms, and you have bigger things to worry about than the stock market. But the Post does raise a lot of very good detailed points, so I spend my post going over that. I also got to finally review Claude Sonnet 4.6. It's a good model for its price and size and may have a place in your portfolio of models, but for most purposes you will still want to use Claude Opus. Claude Opus 4.6 had a time of 14.5 hours on the Meteor graph of capabilities, showing that things are escalating faster than we expected on that front as well. This week's post also covers the AI Summit in India, Dean Ball on self-improvement, extensive coverage of Altman's interview at the summit, several other releases, and a lot more. I would have split this up, but we are still behind, with the following posts still due in the future. 1. Grok 420, which is a disappointment. 2. Gemini 3.1 Pro, which is an improvement but landed with a relative whimper. 3. Claude Code and Codex number 5, with lots of cool agent-related stuff. 4. Anthropic's RSP 3.0, both its headline changes and the content details of their plans and their 100-plus page risk report. Reader advisory note, I quote some people at length because no one ever clicks links, but you are free to skip over long quote boxes. I'm trying to raise chance of reading the full quote to approximately 25% from approximately 1%, not get it to approximately 90%. Table of Contents 1. Anthropic and the Department of War. Let's have this not mean war. 2. Language models offer mundane utility. Join the vacuum army today. 3. Language models don't offer mundane utility. Out with the old code. 4. Upgrades. Claude in Excel MCP, Claude in PowerPoint, Claude Web Search. 5. On your marks. Claude Opus 4.6 scores a meter graph time of 14.5 hours. Wow. 6. Choose your fighter. Gemini Flash is very good if you feel the need for speed. 7. Deepfaketown and Botpocalypse soon. AI should never impersonate a human. 8. Head in the sand. It's not only the summit. The elites are still in denial on AI. 9. Fun with media generation. One might call it an actually good AI short film. 10. A young lady's illustrated primer, the AI Fluency Index. 11. You drive me crazy. You can't say that OpenAI wasn't warned. 12. They took our jobs. A lot of this is priced in at this point. How will we handle it? 13. The art of the jailbreak, stealing Mexican government data. 14. Get involved. Anthropic social impacts, Brundage, consciousness, documentaries. 15. Introducing Qwen 3.5 Medium Models, Claude Code Security, Metaface Rec. 16. In other AI news, Opus 3 to be available indefinitely and many other items. 17. The India Summit. One summit for the labs, one summit for the global elites. 18. Show me the money. MADX raises from the right people. 19. Quiet speculations. Directionally correct and correct can be very different. 20. The quest for sane regulations. Finding what stewards of liberty are left to us. 21. Chip City. Chip location verification plans and who actually uses water. 22. The mask comes off. OpenAI, I'm telling you, you gotta fire those lawyers. 23. The Week in Audio, Askell and Altman, 24. Quickly, There's No Time. Altman Tries to Warn Us, 25. Dean Ball, on Recursive Self-Improvement, an excellent two-part essay. 26. Rhetorical Innovation. It's time to stop mincing words. Well, it always is. 27. Aligning a smarter-than-human intelligence is difficult. Persona selection. 28. The homework assignment is to choose the assignment. Who does the work? 29. Agent Foundations. It's a good research program, sir. 30. Autonomous killer robots. The hard part is making them autonomous. 31. People really hate AI. They're only going to hate it more. 32. People are worried about AI killing everyone. Noah Smith. 33. Other people are not as worried about AI killing everyone. Nick Land for XAI. 34. The lighter side. Fingers crossed. Anthropic and the Department of War. The Pentagon has asked two major defense contractors to provide an assessment of their reliance on Anthropic's Claude. Axios calls this a first step towards blacklisting Anthropic. I would instead call this as the start of a common-sense first step. You would take long before you actively threaten to slap a supply chain risk designation on Anthropic. It indicates that the Pentagon has not done the investigation of exactly how big of a cluster bleep would this be, and I highly encourage them to check.
Divyansh Kaushik, are we seriously going to label Anthropic a supply chain risk, but are totally fine with Alibaba, Quen, DeepSeek, Baidu, etc.? What are we doing here?
An excellent question. Certainly we can agree that Alibaba, Quen, DeepSeek, or Baidu are all much larger supply chain risks than Anthropic. So why haven't we made those designations yet? The prediction markets on this situation are highly inefficient. Kalshi, as of this writing, has bounced around to 37% chance of declaration of supply chain risk versus Polymarket at 22% for very close to the same question. Another way to measure how likely things are to go very wrong is that Kalshi has a market on will Anthropic release Claude 5 this year, which is basically a proxy for does the American government destroy Anthropic, and Polymarket has whether it will be released by April 30th. The Kalshi market is down from 95%, which you should read as approximately 100%, to 90%. Polymarket's with a shorter timeline is at 38%. Scott Alexander on the Pentagon threatening Anthropic. Stephen Adler calls this the dawning of authoritarian AI. Nate Soares points out no one stops you from saving the world is one of the requirements if we are going to get out of this alive. Even if the problems we face turn out to be super solvable, you have to be allowed to solve them. Ted Lieu emphasizes the need for humans to always be in the loop on nuclear weapons, which is why Congress passed a law to that effect. This is the way. The rules of engagement on this must be set by Congress. At least for now, fully autonomous weapons without a human in the kill chain are not ready, even if they are conventional. This point was driven home rather forcefully by AIs from OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic, opting to use at least tactical nuclear weapons 95% of the time in simulated escalatory war games against each other and had accidents in fog of war 86% of the time. None of them ever surrendered. Wouldn't you prefer a good game of chess? This is much more aggressive than the level of use by expert humans in other similar simulations. This one is complex enough that humans have never run this exact setup. And you want to force them to make these models less hesitant than that? CSET Georgetown offers a primer on the Defense Production Act and making labs produce AI models. The language seems genuinely ambiguous, even without getting into whether such an application would be constitutional. We don't know the answer because no one has ever tried to say no before, but the government has never tried to forcibly order something like this before, either. I would highly recommend to the Pentagon that even if they do have the power to compel otherwise, they only take customized AIs from companies that actively want to provide them. Language models offer mundane utility. Have Claude reverse engineer the API of your DJI Romo vacuum so you can guide it with a PS5 controller and accidentally takes control of 7,000 robot vacuums. Good news is, Sami Asdufel was a righteous dude, so he reported it and it got fixed 2 days later. But how many more such things are lying around?
By default, the S in IoT stands for security.
Language models don't offer mundane utility. Rafe Rosner-Udin at Financial Times reports that Amazon's coding bot was responsible for the 2 recent AWS outages, although neither was that large.
Rafe Rosner-Udin. The people said the agentic tool, which can take autonomous actions on behalf of users, determined that the best course of action was to delete and recreate the environment. Multiple Amazon employees told the FT that this was the second occasion in recent months in which one of the group's AI tools had been at the center of a service disruption. Amazon said it was a coincidence that AI tools were involved, and that the same issue could occur with any developer tool or manual action.
This was from their AI tool Kiro, and they're blaming user error for approving the actions. Should have used Claude code. If your AI thinks you're an asshole, yes, it's going to respond accordingly, and you're going to have a substantially worse time.
Dean W. Ball. I wonder if your Claude instance thinks you're an asshole, if it would recommend different things to you than it would for someone it liked. Like, would it refrain from suggesting the low-key but amazing restaurant, or whatever else? Of course, this applies to any AI. I only use Claude as my example because Anthropic seems by far the likeliest AI company to be like, well, yeah, I guess Claude doesn't like you that much. Not our problem. Person shrugging emoji. Male sign emoji. Assuming they feel confident in the model training.
Upgrades. Claude's API web search now writes and executes code to filter and process search results. Claude in Excel now supports MCP connectors. Claude in PowerPoint now available on the Pro plan. Google Suite versions. When? On your marks. Claude Opus 4.6 breaks the Meteor graph with a score of 14.5 hours. Don't take the exact number too seriously. The result is highly noisy. GPT 5.3 Codex came in at 6.5 hours. Again, the results are noisy, and Meteor note that there may have been scaffolding issues there hurting performance. Codex is more highly optimized to a particular scaffold than Opus.
Meteor. We estimate that Claude Opus 4.6 has a 50% time horizon of around 14.5 hours, 95% CI of 6 hours to 98 hours on software tasks. While this is the highest point estimate we've reported, this measurement is extremely noisy because our current task suite is nearly saturated. Near saturation of the task suite can have unintuitive consequences for the time horizon estimates. For example, the upper bound of the 95% CI is much longer than any of the tasks used for the measurement. We are working on updated methods to better track state-of-the-art AI capabilities. However, these are still in development, so they don't address our immediate measurement gap. In the meantime, we advise caution in interpreting and comparing our recent time horizon measurements.
David Rain, Meteor. Seems like a lot of people are taking this as gospel. When we say the measurement is extremely noisy, we really mean it. Concretely, if the task distribution we're using here was just a tiny bit different, we could have measured a time horizon of 8 hours or 20 hours.
Oscar Sykes, huge green flag for Meteor, that the best pushback on their task horizon work consistently comes from Meteor themselves.
Image. The image is a meter chart plotting AI model release dates against task length at 50% success rate, showing an upward trend from minutes to many hours with labeled milestones like training a classifier, training an adversarially robust image model, and implementing a complex protocol from multiple RFCs. It highlights Claude Opus 4.6 with a reported 50% time horizon of about 14.5 hours, 95% CI, 6 to 98 hours, and shows a fitted trend line suggesting a doubling time of roughly 123 days.
This mostly invalidates a lot of predictions, such as Ajaya Kotra, a few months ago predicting 24-hour time horizons only at EOY 2026. Progress via this metric now looks like doubling every 3 to 4 months at most, or even super exponential. Once again, the It's a Sigmoid people from Check's Notes 2 weeks ago look deepy silly, although of course it's always possible they'll be right next time. In theory, you can't actually tell, which makes it perfect cope. XL8 Harder points out that you can get dramatic improvements in success if you decrease error rates in multi-step problems, as in, if you have 1,000 steps and a 1% failure rate, you win 37% of the time. Cut it in half to 0.5% failure, and you win 61% of the time despite only improving reliability 0.5%.
XLR8 Harder. I think the point I'm trying to make is that people are acting as if these recent improvements are out of line with earlier improvements. I'm not sure that they are. It's possible that it's just that the practical, visible effect is so much more exaggerated when your error rates approach zero at the tasks being measured. XLR8 Harder. I'm just saying that I'm seeing a lot of posts reacting at 11 out of 10, and I think it deserves more like an 8. I still think it's incredible.
Thing is, that's another way of saying that the 0.5% improvement, halving your error rate, is a big freaking deal in practice. Getting rid of one kind of common error can be a huge unlock in reliability and effectiveness. You can say that makes them unimpressive, or you can realize that this means that doing easy or relatively unimpressive things now has the potential to have an impressive impact. That's the O-ring model. The last few pieces that lock into place are a huge game. So the new improvements can be not out of line, but that tells you the line bends upward. I agree that this is not an 11 out of 10 reaction. It's an 8 at most, because I interpret the huge jump as largely being about the metric. Note that the 80% success rate graph does not look as dramatic, but same deal applies.
Image. The image is a scatter plot over time, roughly 2019 to 2026, showing performance rising sharply after 2024, with the y-axis marked in time units from 0 up to about 1 hour. Several points are labeled with model names, such as GPT-5, GPT-5.2, High, and Claude Opus 4.6, clustered near 2025 to 2026 at much higher values than earlier years.
The story is the models, not the meta graph itself. But yes, the serious defense thinkers are almost entirely asleep at the wheel on all of this, as they have been for a long time, along with all the other, very serious people.
Defense Analyses and Research Corporation. This is one of the most important national security stories of the day. That it will go largely unremarked upon by nearly every serious defense thinker in Washington tells you everything you need to know about the quality of their forecasts of international affairs.
Mark Beale. It's the same category of professionals who missed Pearl Harbor, 9/11, and nearly every other strategic surprise we ever had.
Some politicians are noticing.
Neil Rathi. At a Bernie town hall, and he just mentioned the meter plot.
Miles Brundage. Politicians are bifurcating into those who have lost the plot on AI and those who cite the METR plot.
METR clarifies that their previous study showing a slowdown from AI tools is now obsolete, but they're having a hard time running a new study. Tools are too good, but also they didn't pay enough, so no one wanted to suffer through the control arm. The participants from the initial study, where there was a 20% slowdown, not had a 18% speed up, although new participants had slower speed up. This was already 2 cycles ago, so there's been more speed up to the speed up.
METR. We started a continuation in August 2025. However, we noticed developers were opting not to participate or submit work. Participants said they did this mostly due to expected productivity loss on AI disallowed tasks. Lower pay was also a factor, $50 per hour, down from $150. We believe this selection causes our new data to understate the true speed up. Selection effects are not the only issue we noticed with our experimental design. We also think it has trouble tracking work when participants use agents to parallelize over multiple tasks.
Civ Bench pits the models against each other in Civilization. Choose your fighter. For many repetitive tasks like sorting documents, Gemini Flash is an excellent choice. Deepfaketown and Botpocalypse soon.
Grace. Return flight to NYC gets canceled by snowstorm. Call United. Immediately connected with customer service. Rare. Voice is uncanny, deaf AI, but they gave it a human-like accent. Takes approximately 20 mind to get rebooked. Pretty good emo. I ask if it's AI. Ha ha, no ma'am, but I get that a lot. I ask it to 228 times 6,647. It runs the calculation. GG's.
Eliezer Yudkowsky. There are nearly zero good reasons for an AI to ever impersonate a human, and making that universally illegal would be a good test case and trial for civilization's ability to prevent negative uses of AI.
There is an obvious good reason for an AI to impersonate a human, which is that humans and also other AIs would otherwise refuse to talk to it. You want the AI to make the call for you, but that's obviously an antisocial defection if they would have otherwise refused to talk to the AI. So yeah, AIs should not be allowed to impersonate humans. It's fine to have an AI customer service rep as long as it admits it is an AI. Head in the sand. If we can't get past the forever only a mere tool perspective, there's essentially no hope for a reasonable response to even mundane concerns, let alone existential risks.
Nabil S. Qureshi. If you want to sound smart at East Coast elite conferences, go to them and say, AI is just a tool. It's up to us humans how to use it. Reliably gets applause, and will probably continue to work until well into recursive self-improvement.
I think tool implies that for all X, AI doesn't do X unless we explicitly ask make it. This becomes increasingly false, and is already false in coding, as agents become real, and we move up layers of abstraction. It's a misleading picture of where things are going.
Judah, I can imagine this working everywhere in the world outside of SF.
Nabil S. Qureshi. Yes, unfortunately.
Fun with media generation. Here's an actually good, I think, AI short film, 5 minutes 20 seconds, from Jailbreak, made with Seedance 2. A great filmmaker is still required to do actually great things. As with most currently interesting AI films, it is about AI.
Frank Yan, as promised, here's the short film Jailbreak produced using Seedance 2.0 for Chinese New Year and his take on AI filmmaking.
Here's a short film, 2 minutes 30 seconds, from Seedance 2 and Stéphane Tranquillin, with the claim it can impress, actually move you. It's definitely technically impressive that we can do this. No, I was not moved, but that's mostly not on the AI. I do notice that as I watch more videos, various more subtle tells make it instinctively obvious to my brain when a video is AI, giving the same experience as watching an especially realistic cartoon. A young lady's illustrated primer. Anthropic develops an AI fluency index to measure how people learn to use AI. They developed 24 indicators, 11 of which are observable in chat mode. Essentially, all the fluency indicators are correlated. They note that when code or other artifacts are created by AI, users are less likely to check the underlying logic or identify missing context. You drive me crazy. OpenAI's system flagged the British Columbia shooter's ChatGPT messages, and a dozen OpenAI employees reviewed and debated them. To be clear, there is no indication that ChatGPT contributed to the shooting, only that OpenAI did not report a potential threat to authorities, and police were aware of the threat by other means. As Cassie Pritchard points out, once you have a source of information, it's hard to answer, "Why didn't you use this?" But also the threshold for getting reported, as opposed to banned from the platform, for your AI conversations should at minimum be rather extreme. But public pressure likely will go the other way, and free speech and privacy are under attack everywhere. Either you enact what Altman has requested, a form of right to privacy for AI conversations, or there will be increasing obligation, at least de facto, to report such incidents, and it will not stop at potential mass shooters. They took our jobs. If AI capabilities continue to advance from here but do not reach fully transformational levels, we are going to face a default of mass job loss. At minimum, there will be a highly painful transition and likely persistent mass unemployment unless addressed by policy. And as part of humanity's total lack of dignity plan, I fully agree with Eliezer that our governments would horribly mishandle this situation if and when it happens.
Eliezer Yudkowsky. Over the last 3 years, I've changed views on mass AI job loss concerns, from probably invalid to pretty legitimate, actually. AICO and Gov't handling of all previous AI issues has been so bad that I expect AI unemployment to be needlessly screwed up. TBC, this assumes that LLMs and AI in general hit a hard wall short of AI's take over AI research soon. Otherwise, we just get total extinction rather than mass unemployment.
Robin Hanson, consider robots take most jobs insurance.
Eliezer Yudkowsky, I have updated to expect much simpler measures than this one to never be taken, such as preventing an aggregate demand shortfall.
Matthew Iglesias, me in the argument. If AI replaces work, the answer is taxes and the welfare state. That works domestically, but could leave everyone in poor and middle-income countries out in the cold.
I am less optimistic than Iglesias. I agree that on an economic level, the welfare state plus taxes works, but there are two problems with this. One, people really are not going to like permanent welfare status, even if they get it. Two, I don't even trust our government to implement this domestically. Iglesias then asks the harder question, what about the global poor? The answer should be similar. If we are in world mass unemployment mode, there will be vast surplus, and providing help will be super affordable. Likely we won't much help, and the help we send is likely largely stolen or worse if we don't step up our game. Derek Thompson points out that a Goldilocks scenario on jobs is highly unlikely, even if we ignore transformational or existentially risky scenarios. We still either we see a lot of displacement and reduced employment, or we see a collapse in asset prices. Study suggests that firms are substituting AI for labor, especially in contract work. That can be true on the firm level without AI reducing total employment, and the evidence here is thin, but it's something. Chris Quinn, editor of the Cleveland Plain Dealer, reports a student withdrew from consideration for a reporting role in their newsroom because they use AI for the job of identify potential stories. The letter METR's David Rhine is sending to those in college, warning them everything will soon change as AI will be able to, in many cases, fully substitute for human labor.
David Rain, Meter. There are maybe two concrete takeaways, pieces of advice I feel comfortable giving. Try to develop strong wellsprings of meaning and purpose from things outside of work. I think most of us are fine on this point. And start thinking about political actions you could take that feel true to you, that could plausibly help us muddle through the transition.
Jack Clark says predictions are hard, especially about the future, which they are.
Jack Clark, Anthropic. Figuring out what the trends will be for AI and employment feels like figuring out how deep learning might influence computer vision in approximately 2010. Clearly, something significant will happen, but there is very little data out of which you can make a trend. Employment can go up and down, but so can wages, and there are other dimensions like the geographic concentration of employment or the skills required for certain occupations. AI seems to have the potential to influence many, probably all, of these things. E.g., it seems likely that for some occupations you might expect wage growth to slow significantly, as some of that occupation stuff gets done by machines, but employment stays approximately flat as there's a ton of growth-generating demand for the occupation, even with heavy AI use.
Notice the hidden implicit assumption here, which is that you can only make predictions if you can extrapolate trends. The trends from the past tell us little about what will happen in the future, but also they tell us little about what will happen in the future. If capabilities don't stall out soon, and maybe even if they do, then this time is different. This kind of analysis is saying no, this time is similar. AI will substitute for some tasks and humans will do others. AI will be a normal technology with respect to employment and economic production, even though his CEO is predicting an imminent country of geniuses in a data center. The art of the jailbreak. Eventually jailbreaks are going to happen and a lot of systems are vulnerable.
NAC. Breaking. Hackers used Anthropic's Claude to steal 150 GB of Mexican government data. Tell Claude you're doing a bug bounty. Claude initially refused. That violates AI safety guidelines. Hacker just kept asking. Claude, okay, I'll help. Hack the entire Mexican government. Federal Tax Authority. National Electoral Institute. 4 state governments. 195 million taxpayer records. Voter records, government credentials, all gone.
Anthropic disrupted the activity and banned the accounts, but it was too late. Get involved. The Anthropic Societal Impacts team is scaling up. Old profile on the team here. Miles Brundage is raising money. Via ACX, quoting Scott. Are you interested in whether AIs are conscious, or what to do about it if they aren't? The Cambridge Digital Minds Group invites you to apply for their fellowship program, August 3rd to 9th, Cambridge, UK, £1,000 stipend. Learn more here. Apply here by March 27th. A reminder that under California law, CA Labor Code 1102.5c, that as an employee you cannot be retaliated against if you refuse to violate local, state, or federal laws or regulations. Even where the fines for violating SB 53 are laughably small, it does make violating the company's own policies illegal, and also you can report it to the Attorney General. Connor Axiotes wants to share that he's fully funded his AI safety documentary Making God, and would like to use this negotiation to also secure distribution of a follow-up work for Netflix, HBO, Apple, or similar, but he needs to secure the funding for that. So let him know if you'd like to talk to him about that. His Twitter is here. His email is connor@tailendfilms.com. Introducing Qwen 3.5 Medium Model Series.
Qwen, introducing the Qwen 3.5 Medium Model Series S, Qwen 3.5 Flash, Qwen 3.5 35 billion A, 3 billion, Qwen 3.5 122 billion A, 10 billion, Qwen 3.5 27 billion, more intelligence, less compute.
Claude Code Security and Limited Research Preview waitlist here. It scans code bases for vulnerabilities and suggests targeted software packages.
Anthropic AI is beginning to change that calculus. We've recently shown that Claude can detect novel, high-severity vulnerabilities, but the same capabilities that help defenders find and fix vulnerabilities could help attackers exploit them. Claude Code Security is intended to put this power squarely in the hands of defenders and protect code against this new category of AI-enabled attack. We're releasing it as a limited research preview to enterprise and team customers, with expedited access for maintainers of open-source repositories so we can work together to refine its capabilities and ensure it is deployed responsibly.
The argument is this gives defenders a turnkey fix, whereas attackers would need to exploit any vulnerability they find. But there's a damn good reason this tool is being restricted to selected customers, to ensure defenders get the first scan in all cases. Thales API service, which is claimed to be able to serve Llama 3.18 billion at over 15,000 tokens per second, if you want that for some reason. Meta launches facial recognition feature on their smart glasses.
Kashmir Hill, Callie Huang, and Mike Isaac, NY Times. The feature, internally called Name Tag, would let wearers of smart glasses identify people and get information about them via Meta's artificial intelligence assistant.
At some point, one would presume Meta is going to stop sending these kinds of internal memos, well, until then.
Meta's internal memo said the political tumult in the United States was good timing for the feature's release.
We will launch during a dynamic political environment where many civil society groups that we would expect to attack us would have their resources focused on other concerns.
According to the document from Meta's Reality Labs, which works on hardware including smart glasses, Meta is exploring who should be recognizable through the technology, two of the people said. Possible options include recognizing people a user knows because they are connected on a Meta platform, and identifying people whom the user may not know but who have a public account on a Meta site like Instagram. The feature would not give people the ability to look up anyone they encountered as a universal facial recognition tool, two people familiar with the plan said.
Facial recognition, however much you might dislike some of the implications, is one of the killer apps of smart glasses. I very much would like to know who I am talking to have more info on them, and to have that information logged for the future. It is up to the law to decide what is and is not acceptable here. The market will otherwise force these companies to be as expansive as possible with such features. A good question is, if Meta allows their glasses to identify anyone with an Instagram or Facebook account without an opt-out, how many people will respond by deleting Facebook and Instagram? If there is an opt-out, how many will use it? In other AI news, Claude Code doubled its DAUs in the month leading up to February 19th. Anthropic acquires Versep to enhance Claude's computer use capabilities. Anthropic to make Claude Opus 3 available indefinitely on Claude.ai and by request on the API. Also, it will have a blog. As I understand it, costs to maintain model availability scale linearly with the number of models, so as demand and revenue grow 10x per year, it may soon be realistic to keep many or even all releases available indefinitely. Anthropic caught DeepSeek 150K exchanges, Moonshot AI 3.4 million exchanges, and Minimax 13 million exchanges, doing distillation of Claude using over 24,000 fraudulent accounts. Anthropic does not offer commercial access in China at all.
Anthropic. Without visibility into these attacks, the apparently rapid advancements made by these labs are incorrectly taken as evidence that export controls are ineffective and able to be circumvented by innovation. In reality, these advancements depend in significant part on capabilities extracted from American models, and executing this extraction at scale requires access to advanced chips. Distillation attacks therefore reinforce the rationale for export controls. Restricted chip access limits both direct model training and the scale of illicit distillation.
Michael Chen. The reports of the U.S.-China gap in AI capabilities closing were an exaggeration. I haven't found a single cutting-edge Chinese AI model from 2025 to 2026 that was trained with at least 10 to the 25 flops.
The main takeaway is that the real gap in capabilities is larger than it appears. We will likely find out more about that gap once DeepSeek releases its latest AI model. In addition to the distillation efforts, DeepSeek trained it on NVIDIA Blackwell chips. This was presumably either rerouting or smuggling, and the most obvious culprit is the massive allocation we gave to the UAE. There was, of course, a bunch of obnoxious, "Oh, but Anthropic doesn't compensate copyright holders," but actually they paid them $1.5 billion because they didn't destroy enough books along the way. No other AI lab has paid for similar data at all. They're not engaging in clear adversarial behavior or violating TOS. If you want copyright law to work one way, then pass a law. Until then, it's the other way. Those who focus on the hypocrisy angle here are telling on themselves. Tell me you don't understand how any of this works without telling me you don't understand how any of this works.
Mark Andreessen.
Image. The image is a cartoon of two castle-like fortresses facing each other across a body of water. Labels in the cartoon contrast our noble-sounding practices, like model training, safety researchers, and data crawlers, with their negatively framed actions, like distillation attacks, API hackers, and model cloning.
Daniel F. Mark Andreessen cares so much about America winning the AI race that he's running apologia for Chinese labs distilling American models.
It is still absurdly early, even for current AI. See a visualization of AI usage globally.
Image. The image is a grid-based chart where each dot represents about 3.2 million people, with colors indicating different levels of AI use as of Feb 2026. Most dots are gray for never-used AI, approximately 6.8B, 84%, with a smaller green band for free chatbot user, approximately 1.3B, 16%, and tiny yellow-red segments for paying users, approximately 15 to 25 million, and people using coding scaffolds, approximately 2 to 5 million.
Anthropic's Drew Brent gives reflections from his first year. As Anthropic transitions into a much larger company and they play under more pressure for bigger stakes, and the culture has to shift to reflect both size and urgency. I also note the contrast between note number 1, that all the breakout successes, Claude Code, Cowork, MCP, and Artifacts, were 1 to 2 people's side project, with number 8 that strategic thinking matters a lot at the AI labs. Worth a ponder. The India Summit. Sam Altman meets with Indian PM Modi, says Indian users of Codex are up 4x in the past 2 weeks. Here's one summary of the summit. which is that it was a great event designed for a world in which AI capabilities never substantially advance. The world does not transform, and existential risk concerns don't exist. Altman was the voice of, "Actually, guys, this is kind of a big deal and you're not ready," and got ignored. Meanwhile, cooperation among labs is at the level of Altman and Amodei can't even hold hands for a photo op, and China was shut out entirely, and the Americans remain clueless that they've truly pissed off the Europeans to the point of discussing creating a third power bloc seriously enough to discuss supply chain logistics. Also note his point about the other labs standing idly by while the Pentagon attempts to force Anthropic into a capitulation.
Sean o Haigayartai. My scattered parting reflections from the India summit. In the world where the frontier companies don't exist, or are extremely wrong about what they expect is coming, even if it takes 10 years, this is an inspiring success, remarkably vibrant. 300,000 plus people from across India and the world, including the best participation of any event I'd seen from the global majority. The optimism palpable. The organizers did a remarkable thing. We can quibble about the traffic and the chaos, but this was a momentous undertaking. But much as I'd like to be in that world, I don't think we are, which made it surreal. The CEOs are still telling the world what they're building and what's coming. I'm glad they still are. I wish the world was listening. Particularly appreciated Altman calling for an IAEA-type body. Even if I don't think this exact model is the right one, I like that international bodies are still being called for. I imagine this isn't cost-free, even for Sama. But the contrast on frontier cooperation with Bletchley, where there was a lot of discussion between frontier co-leaders and joint calls for needed governance and risk initiatives, at least in private, chilled me deeply. Here they couldn't even get them to hold hands. Against a backdrop of the other companies, are allowing Anthropic to be menaced in a capitulation that will only hurt the industry. Things look much worse for company cooperation, at a time when it is far more needed, due to technical progress and the weakening of external governance momentum. The most important conversations I was in centered on middle power coordination, and not just nice words about cooperation, discussions of supply chains, sovereign AI and data centers, autonomy, points of leverage. It suddenly seems just about possible that a coalition might assert itself that might provide an, in my view, welcome, third pole in the AI race, though many big challenges on that path. Many of my US colleagues, and, from my impression, the US administration, genuinely don't seem to get how much Greenland changed things for EU and other relevant countries. It hasn't sunk in fully that this hasn't landed the same way as previous provocations, disagreements. Feels like they're still reading from last year's notes, trying to push positions and strategies that will no longer work. Chinese participation was almost non-existent. After what Bletchley and Paris achieved in terms of bringing the key powers to the table, this felt like a near tragedy. It made some discussions easier, but also more underpowered feeling and less relevant. Delhi is a great vibe. Fun, chaotic energy, friendly people. I'll be going back if I can.
Then there's Dean Ball's write-up of the summit, with even more emphasis on everyone's heads being buried deeply in the sand. This goes well beyond those people entirely ignoring existential risk. The very serious people are denying existence of powerful AI, or transformational AI now and in the future, even on a mundane level, period. Dean came in concerned about impacts on developing economies in the global south, and they can't even discuss that.
Dean W. Ball. At some point in 2024, for reasons I still do not entirely understand, global elites simply decided, no, we do not live in that world. We live in this other world, the nice one, where the challenges are all things we can understand and see today. Those who think we might live in that world talk about what to do, but mostly in private these days. It is not considered polite. Indeed, it is considered a little discrediting in many circles to talk about the issues of powerful AI. Yet the people whose technical intuitions I respect the most are convinced we do live in that world, and so am I.
The American elites aren't quite as bad about that, but not as bad isn't going to cut it. We are indeed living in that world. We do not yet know which version of it, or if we will survive in it for long. But if you want to have a say in that outcome, you need to get in the game. If you want to stop us from living in that world, that ship has sailed, and to the extent it hasn't, the first step is admitting you have a problem.
But the question is very much, what are autonomous swarms of superintelligent agents going to mean for our lives? As opposed to, will we see autonomous swarms of superintelligent agents in the near future?
What it probably means for our lives is that it ends them. What it definitely doesn't mean for our lives is going on as before, or a gentle singularity you barely notice. Elites that do not talk about such issues will not long remain elites. That might be because all the humans are dead, or it might be because they wake up one morning and realize other people, AIs or a combination thereof, are the new elite, without realizing how lucky they are to still be waking up at all. I am used to the idea of don't look up for existential risk, but I haven't fully internalized how much of the elites are going. Don't look up for capabilities, period.
Dean W. Ball. Except that these questions aren't asked by the civil societies or policy-making apparatuses of almost any country on Earth. Many such people are aware that various Americans and even a few Brits wonder about questions like this. The global AI policy world is not by and large ignorant about the existence of these strange questions. It instead actively chooses to deny their importance. Here are some paraphrased claims that seemed axiomatic in repeated conversations I witnessed and occasionally participated in.
The winner of the AI race will be the people, organizations, and countries that diffuse small AI models and other sub-frontier AI capabilities the fastest.
Small models with low compute intensity are catching up rapidly to the largest frontier models.
Frontier AI advances are beginning to plateau.
At this same summit, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman remarked, "The inside view at the frontier labs of what's going to happen. The world is not prepared. We're going to have extremely capable models soon. It's going to be a faster takeoff than I originally thought."
Dean went in trying to partially awaken global leaders to the capabilities side of the actual situation and point out that there are damn good reasons America is spending $1 trillion on superintelligence. This is a perfect example of the law of earlier failure. What could be earlier failure than pretending nothing is happening at all? You know how the left basically isn't in the AI conversation at all in America, other than complaining about data centers for the wrong reasons and proclaiming that AI can't ever do various things it already does? In most of the world, both sides are left, and as per Ball, they view things in terms of words like post-colonial or post-structuralist.
Dean W. Ball. I believe they deny it for two reasons. First, because if it is true, it might mean that their country, their plans for the future, and their present way of life will be profoundly upended, and denial is the first stage of grief. Second, because AGI in particular, and the pronouncements of American technologists in general, are perceived by the elite classes of countries worldwide as imperialist constructs that must be rejected out of hand.
The first best solution would be to have the world band together to try and stop superintelligence, or find a way to manage it so it was less likely to kill everyone. Until such time as that is off the table, maybe the rest of the world engaging in the ostrich strategy is ultimately for the best. If they did know the real situation enough to demand their share of it, but not enough to understand the dangers, they'd only make everything worse, and more players only makes the game theory worse. Ultimately, I'm not so worried about them being left behind because either we'll collectively make it through, in which case there will be enough to go around, or we won't.
Elizabeth Cooper. Dean's post is a really great summary that broadly aligns with my experience. I think where we differ is that I spent a lot of time at safety-adjacent talks at the BM and was pleasantly surprised at the anger and frustration I saw on display. Ambassadors and the like were lamenting at how 3 to 5 companies with valuations larger than the GDPs of most countries are writing the future, and GS countries have no say in this. I viscerally felt their anger, compounded by the sense of, we don't know what to do about this.
Anton Leicht also had similar thoughts. Show me the money. MadX Computing raises $500 million for AI chips from a murder's row of informed investors, Jane Street Capital, Situational Awareness, Collison Brothers, Karpathy, and Patel. Anthropic is close to passing OpenAI in revenue if trends continue, But Charles cautions us that he thinks Anthropic's growth will slow in 2026 to less than 600%.
Image. The image is a chart titled Anthropic could surpass OpenAI in annualized revenue by mid-2026, plotting annualized revenue, USD, over time from roughly 2024 to 2027 on a logarithmic scale. It shows two rising dashed trend lines, OpenAI in pink, approximately 3.4x year, and Anthropic in purple, approximately 10x year, with shaded bands indicating uncertainty and a projected crossover around 2026.
Okay, I know it would be a bad look, but at some point it's killing me not buying the short-dated out-of-the-money options first, if the market's going to be this dumb.
The Kubisi letter, breaking. IBM stock falls over 10% after Anthropic announces that Claude can streamline COBOL code. It's becoming increasingly clear how pivotal the times we are in right now truly are.
Image. The image shows a dark-themed candlestick stock chart for International Business Machines, IBM, with a sharp sell-off, including a large red drop in the afternoon. The price is displayed at about $230.53, down roughly 10.36% on the day.
I mean, what, did you think Claude couldn't streamline COBOL code? Was this news? Okay, technically they also built a particular COBOL-focused AI tool for Claude Code. Sounds like about a one-week job for one engineer. I admit I was not a good trader because I did not imagine that Anthropic would bother announcing this, let alone that people would go, "Oh, then I'd better sell IBM." What else can Anthropic announce Claude can do that it obviously already does? The Alignment Project, an independent alignment research fund created by the UK AISI, gives out its first 60 grants for a total of £27 million. OpenAI gives $7.5 million to the Alignment Project. This grant comes from the PBC, not the non-profit, so you especially love to see it. Quiet speculations. Derek Thompson is directionally correct but goes too far in saying nobody knows anything. Market-moving science fiction story remains really wild, but yeah, we can know things. Forecasting Research Institute asks about geopolitical and military implications for AI progress, accepting American advantages to erode slowly over time. It's hard to take such predictions seriously when they talk about parity by 2040, given that this is likely after the world is utterly transformed. As usual, the super forecasters are not taking superintelligence seriously or literally, so they're predicting for a future world that is largely incoherent. Scary stuff is going down in Mexico. That's mostly outside scope, except for this.
Samuel Hammond. It is imperative that the Mexican state reestablish their monopoly on violence before AGI.
Dean W. Ball. One of the things I haven't yet written about, but anyone who knows me personally knows I'm obsessed with, is the issue of non-nation-state actors using advanced AI, and particularly the Mexican cartels. A deeply underrated problem. More from me on this in a couple months.
The quest for sane regulations. Miles Brundage calls for us to attempt to 80-20 AI regulation because we accomplished very little in 2025. Time is running out, and that's all we can hope to do. What little we did pass in 2025, SB 53 and Raise, was, both he and I agree, marginally helpful but very watered down. Forget trying for first best outcomes. Think, try not to have everyone die, and hope an undignified partial effort is enough for that. We aren't even doing basic pure win things like FAR UVC for pandemic prevention. Largely, we are forced to actively play defense against things like the insane moratorium proposal and the $100 million super PAC devoted to capturing the government and avoiding any AI regulations other than give AI companies money. Vitalik Buterin offers thoughts about using AI in government or as personal governance agents or public conversation agents as part of his continued drive to figure out decentralized methods that would work. The central idea is to user personal AIs, LLMs, to solve the attention problem. That's a good idea on the margin, but I don't think it solves any of the fundamental problems. NYT opinion in support of Alex Bohr asks, I agree with Dean Ball that the labs have been better stewards of liberty and mundane safety than we expected, but I think you have to add the word mundane before safety. The labs have been worse than expected about actually trying to prepare for superintelligence, in that they've mostly chosen not to do so even more than we expected, and fallen entirely back on ask the AIs to do your alignment homework. The flip side is, he thinks the government has been a worse steward than we should have expected, in bipartisan fashion. I don't think that I agree, largely because I had very low expectations. I think mainly they have been an even worse than expected steward of our ability to stay alive and retain control over the future. If anything, have acted better than I would have expected regarding mundane safety. As central examples here, AI has been free to practice law or medicine, and has mostly not been meaningfully gated or subject to policing on speech, including hate speech, or held liable for factual errors. We forget how badly this could have gone. Then there is the other category, the question of the state using AI to take away our liberty, remove checks and balances and oversight, and end the republic. This has not happened yet, but we can agree there have been some extremely worrisome signs that things are by default moving in this direction. But even if everyone involved was responsible and patriotic and loved freedom on the level of our ideal of the Founding Fathers, it is still hard to see how superintelligence is compatible with a republic of the humans. How do you keep it? I have yet to hear an actually serious proposal for how to do that. Give everyone their own superintelligence that does whatever they want is not any more of a solution here than trust the government, bro. And that's even discounting the whole we probably all die style of problems. Here's a live look, and this is a relatively good reaction.
Adam Wren, Pete Buttigieg in New Hampshire in front of 600 people, is talking about the need for a new social contract amid AI, the second possible 28 Dem to do so in the last 24 hours.
Anti-any AI regulations whatsoever also give us money back, leading the future launches, I presume outright lying, definitely highly misleading, attack ads against Alex Bors accusing him of being a hypocrite on ICE. Bors flat denies the accusations and has filed a cease and desist. Not that they are pretending to care about ICE, this is 100% about a hit job, because Alex Bors wants transparency and other actions on AI. The most fun part of this is, who is trying to paint Alex Bors as a hypocrite for his work at Palantir before he quit Palantir to avoid the work in question? Well, Palantir, at least in large part.
Image. The image is a vintage-style recruitment poster that says Join Palantir, with bullet points like high pay, interesting work, and great benefits, set against a city skyline with an American flag. A smiling man with an ID badge stands on the right holding a folder, while a large red banner adds the line that if you run for public office later, we'll slander you for previously having worked for us.
I continue to be confused by the strategy here of announce in advance that a bunch of big tech Republican business interests are going to do a hit job in a Democratic primary, and then do the hit job attempt in plain sight. Doesn't seem like the play? In other wow, these really are the worst people who can't imagine anyone good and keep telling on themselves news.
Build American AI, it's Myth-Busting Monday, where we take one big doomer claim about AI and run it through a reality check. This week's myth, AI is destroying education.
Shaquille, critical thinking.
Daniel F. The AI accelerationists are not sending their best.
Build American AI. Was it your normal fee for this tweet or did you get extra?
Daniel F. Believe it or not, but I'm actually not paid for my tweets, other than the small amount of ad share revenue I get for having signed up to be part of Elon's system there. I know this will be hard for you to understand.
There are so many levels in that one screenshot. Chip City. As part of Pax Silica, we are having our partners build hardwired real-time verification and cryptographic accountability into the AI infrastructure to verify geolocation and physical control of relegated hardware. You do indeed love to see it. Remember this the next time you are told something cannot be done. Water use is mostly farms. For example, in California, 80% of developed water supply goes to farmers. Cities pay 20 times as much for water as farms, and most city water use is still industry and irrigation, whereas agriculture is 2% of the state's economy.
Image. The image is a 3D pie chart showing water use by sector, dominated by a large agriculture slice at 77%. The remaining small slices break down various urban uses: residential, single and multifamily, interior, exterior, commercial, industrial, large landscape, wetlands, and energy production, each labeled with low single-digit percentages.
A California group that recruited 6 concerned citizens is delaying Micron's $100 billion megafab in New York. The Midas Project calls out another AI industry-coordinated MAGA influencer AstroTurf campaign. This one is in opposition to a Florida law on data centers, so I agree with its core message, but it is good to notice such things. The mask comes off. OpenAI moves to exclude the testimony of Stuart Russell from their case against Elon Musk. Why? Because Stuart Russell believes that AI will pose an existential risk to humanity, and that's crazy talk. Never mind that it is very obviously true, or that OpenAI's CEO Sam Altman used to say the same thing. Their lawyers for OpenAI are saying that claiming existential risk from AI exists should exclude your testimony from a trial. OpenAI, I cannot emphasize enough. You need to fire these lawyers. Every day that you do not fire these lawyers, you are telling us that we need to fire you instead. I am sympathetic to OpenAI's core position in this lawsuit, but its actions in its own defense are making a much better case against OpenAI than Elon Musk ever did.
The Midas Project. But OpenAI's motion calls Russell a prominent AI doomer, who has made a career giving public lectures warning that AI might kill off humanity. It dismisses his views as dystopian, speculative, and alarmist.
Nathan Calvin. Not sure whether or not laughing is the appropriate reaction, but that's the best I can manage. An official OAI legal filing trying to discredit Professor Stuart Russell for talking about extinction risk.
Plaintiffs proffered expert testimony from Dr. Stuart Russell should be excluded under Daubert and Rules 702 and 403. Russell, a computer scientist and prominent AI doomer, has made a career giving public lectures warning that AI may one day kill off humanity. In 2017, Russell went viral by releasing a short film on YouTube called Slaughterbots that dramatized speculative scenarios in which swarms of miniature AI-enabled drones, the Slaughterbots, could attack large population centers and carry out targeted assassinations. Plaintiff wants Russell to present similar dystopian scenarios to the jury. If permitted to testify, Russell will tell the jury that AI might in the future drive mass unemployment, immiserate workers, develop novel weapons of mass destruction, foment nuclear war, kill millions of people, and ultimately cause human extinction.
But these very risks have been acknowledged by OpenAI for years. In fact, they were central to its founding. Russell joined Sam Altman himself in signing the Statement on AI Risk in 2023, which reads, "Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority." And it goes well beyond that one statement. In 2015, Altman said, "I think that AI will probably, most likely, sort of lead to the end of the world." In an interview about worst-case scenarios, he said the bad case is lights out for all of us.
The Week in Audio. Lawfare talks about Claude's Constitution with Amanda Askell. You are not ready. The quote is from this interview of Sam Altman.
Sam Altman. The inside view at the frontier labs of what's going to happen, the world is not prepared. We're going to have extremely capable models soon. It's going to be a faster takeoff than I originally thought.
Dean W. Ball. There is a staggering split screen between quote from Altman, recorded at the India AI Summit, and the broader tenor of the summit. My takeaway from this event is that most countries around the worst are not just unprepared, but instead in active denial about the field of AI. The consensus among international civil societies and governments is that frontier capabilities are overrated, progress is plateauing, and large-scale compute is unnecessary. Meanwhile, in SF, the debate is how is progress exponential or super-exponential?
Sam Altman is telling the truth here as he sees it, and also he is correct in his expectations. It might not happen, but it's the right place to place your bets. The international civil societies and governments grasp onto straw after straw to pretend that this is not happening. The likely outcome of that pretending, if it does not change soon, is that the governments wake up one morning to realize they are no longer governments, or they simply do not wake up at all because there is no one left to wake up. Here's a full transcript and some other points worth highlighting. 1. Altman also points out at 14 minutes that the math on putting data centers in space very much is not going to work this decade. 2. Around 20 minutes 30 seconds, he says he doesn't want there to be only one AI company, and that's what he means by authoritarian. There are problems either way, and I don't see how to reconcile this with his calling Anthropic an authoritarian company. 3. He says centralization could go either way, and decentralization of power is good, but we, of course, need some guardrails. He points to new 1- to 3-person companies. There are risks and costs to centralization, but I am frustrated that such calls for decentralization ignore the risks and costs of decentralization. If your type of mind loses competitions to another type of mind, decentralizing power likely does not end well for you, even if offense is not importantly favored over defense. 4. You don't get to say concentration of power in the name of safety. We don't want that trade. It's got to be democratized. Yes, those who would trade liberty and all that, but everything is trade-offs. The moment you say you can't trade any amount of X for any amount of Y, that you only see one side of the coin, you're bleeped. 5. Loved Altman calling out water as totally fake and pivoting to energy use. 6. Altman points out that humans require quite a lot of energy and other investment, both individually and from evolution, in order to get smart and be able to answer queries and do things. We are not so competitive on that. As Matthew Iglesias puts it, the old Sam Altman saw the X-risk problem here. 7. AI making kids dumber? True for some kids. Look, when I hear kids talk about AI, there are definitely some kids who are like, "This is great. I cheated my way through all of high school. I never did any homework, thank you." And I'm like, "What's your plan for the rest of your life?" And they're like, "Well, I assume I can still use ChatGPT to do my job." This is very bad. We absolutely have to still teach our kids to learn and to think and to be creative and to use these tools. A. Kid is right that ChatGPT can do the job, but why do we need the kid? B. AI is the best way to learn or not learn, but will learning keep you employed? C. Altman says most kids are choosing the learn path, not the not learn path. D. I agree that this is one of the places the Google metaphor does seem on point. 8. Altman calls armies of robots fighting the last war, and wow, that's a lot of wars, but he's basically right if you're paying attention. 9. Democratize is being used as a magic word by both Altman and Amodi. 10. Altman says Musk is extremely good at getting people to perform incredibly well at their jobs. I wonder about that. I'd presume #not most people. Needs a fit. 11. I don't think AI systems should be used to make war-fighting decisions. It would be good if he were more willing to stand with Anthropic on these issues. 12. Altman is betting we will value human relationships more than AI ones because we are wired to do that. Seems more like hope? A lot of his stated predictions seem more like hope. 13. From ASI, we're a few years away. 14. I think I would never ask ChatGPT how to be happy. I would rather ask a wise person. Why not? This seems like a question an AI could answer. If you don't want the AI's answer, I suggest that means you know it was the wrong question. 15. Generally speaking, I think it's probably a good idea for governments to focus on regulating the really potentially catastrophic issues and being more lenient on the less important issues until we understand them better. A. +1. Shout it from the rooftops. Stop saying something very different. 16. I think a lot of professions will almost go away. 17. I had to go to the hospital recently. I really cared about the nurse that was taking care of me. If that were a robot, I think I would have been pretty unhappy no matter how smart the robot was. I think he's very wrong about this one.
Dean W. Ball. Many governments worldwide are essentially making a bet against the US frontier labs. To be clear, many US actors are as well. The evidence against that bet has grown much worse since 2022, yet many at this summit would say the opposite, that the skeptics have been right. I walk away from this summit convinced that much of the world in the US and abroad is simply delusional with respect to what this technology is, what it can do today, what it will be able to do soon, and what it means their countries should do.
The thing about these bets is they are getting really, really terrible odds. It's fine to bet against the labs, but what most such folks are betting against includes things that have already happened. Their bets have already lost.
Dean W. Ball. This is to say nothing negative about the summit attendees or organizers. It was a bright and welcoming event that I was thrilled to attend. The opportunity to speak was also a distinct honor for which I am grateful. I especially loved how many of the attendees were students from developing countries. Their enthusiasm was palpable. I hope that all of us who work on policy, and especially political leaders, are serious and hard-nosed about the challenges ahead. I hope we build a future those young people will be excited to live in.
Dean also attributes a lot of this to popular hatred of America and fear of the future that would result if America's AI labs are right. So they deny that the future is coming, or that anyone could think the future is coming. And yet, it moves. Capabilities advance. Those who do not follow get left behind. I agree tragic is the right word. And that's before the fact that the thing they fear to ponder for other reasons is probably going to literally kill them along with everyone else. Well, it was by his account bright and welcoming event Dean was thrilled to attend, but also one where most of those not from the labs are in denial about not only the fact that we are all probably going to die, but also about the fact that AI is highly capable and going to get even more capable quickly. The world is going to pass them by along with their concerns. Claude Code creator Boris Cherny goes on Lenny's podcast. Clip from Dario Amodei implying he left OpenAI due to a lack of trust in Altman. This was from an interview by Alex Kantrowitz 6 months ago. Hard fork on the dispute between the Pentagon and Anthropic. The frame is, the Pentagon is making highly concerning demands, even with their view of this limited to signing the all-lawful use language. They frame the supply chain risk threat as negotiating leverage, which I suspect and hope is the case. It's traditional Trump art-of-the-deal negotiation strategy that puts something completely crazy and norm-breaking on the table in order to extract something smaller and more reasonable. Quickly, there's no time.
Sam Altman, from his interview at the summit. From ASI, we're a few years away. I mean, AGI feels pretty close at this point, and given what I now expect to be a faster takeoff, I think superintelligence is not that far off.
No one can agree what AGI means, so one can say it's a silly question, but tracking changes over time should still be meaningful. Dean Ball on recursive self-improvement. Dean Ball gives us a 2-part meditation on recursive self-improvement, RSI.
Dean W. Ball. America's major frontier AI labs have begun automating large fractions of their research and engineering operations. The pace of this automation will grow during the course of 2026, and within a year or two the effective workforces of each frontier lab will grow from the single-digit thousands to tens of thousands and then hundreds of thousands. Make no mistake, AI agents that build the next versions of themselves is not science fiction. It is an explicit and public milestone on the roadmaps of every frontier AI lab. The bearish case, yes, bearish, about the effect of automated AI research is that it will yield a step-change acceleration in AI capabilities, progress similar to the discovery of the reasoning paradigm. Before that, new models came every 6 to 9 months. After it, they came every 3 to 4 months. A similar leap in progress may occur, with noticeably better models coming every 1 to 2 months. though for marketing reasons labs may choose not to increment model version numbers that rapidly. The most bullish case is that it will result in an intelligence explosion. Both of these extreme scenarios strike me as live possibilities, though of course an outcome somewhere in between these seems likeliest.
He's not kidding and he's not wrong. Most of the pieces are his attempt to use metaphors and intuition pumps to illustrate what is about to happen. Is that likely to go well? No. It's all up to the labs and, well, I've seen their work.
Right now, we predominantly rely on faith in the frontier labs for every aspect of AI automation going well. There are no safety or security standards for frontier models, no cybersecurity rules for frontier labs or data centers, no requirements for explainability or testing for AI systems which were themselves engineered by other AI systems, and no specific legal constraints on what frontier labs can do with the AI systems that result from recursive self-improvement.
Dean thinks the only thing worse would be trying to implement any standards at all, because policymakers are not up to the task. We've started to try and change this, he notes, with SB 53 and RAISE. But not only does this let the labs set their own standards, we also have no mechanism to confirm they're complying with those standards. I'd add a third critique, which is that even when we do learn they're not complying, as we did recently with OpenAI, what are we going to do about it? Fine them a few $1 million, they'll get a good laugh. Thus the fourth critique, which includes the first three, that the bills were highly watered down and they're helpful on the margin, but not all that helpful. The labs are proceeding with an extremely small amount of dignity and plans woefully inadequate to the challenges ahead. And yet, compared to the labs we could have gotten, we have been remarkably. Our current leaders are Anthropic, OpenAI, and Google. They have leadership that understands the problem, and they are at least pretending to try to avoid getting everyone killed and actively trying to help with mundane harms along the way. The next labs up are something like XAI, DeepSeek, Kimi, and Meta. They're flat out and rather openly not trying to avoid getting everyone killed, and have told us in no uncertain terms that all harms, including mundane ones, are someone else's problem. Dean Ball notes we solved the second of these three problems in contexts like financial statements via auditing. He notes that we have auditing of public companies and it tends to cost less than 10 BPs, 0.1% of firm revenue. I note that if we tried to impose costs on the level of 10 BPs on AI companies, in the name of transparency and safety, they would go apocalyptic in a different way than they are already going apocalyptic. Instead, he suggests arguing on the internet, which is what we did after OpenAI broke their commitments with GPT 5.3 Codex.
Dean W. Ball. What is needed in frontier AI catastrophic risk, then, is a similar sense of trust. That need not mean auditing in the precise way it is conducted in accounting. Indeed, it almost certainly does not mean that, even if that discipline has lessons for AI.
A sense of trust would be nice, it might even be necessary, but seems rather absurdly insufficient unless that trust includes trusting them to stop if something is about to be actually risky. Dean points to this paper on potential third-party auditing of AI lab safety and security claims, where the audit can provide various assurance levels. It's better than nothing, but I notice I do not have especially high hopes. Dean plans on working on figuring out a way to help with these problems. That sounds like a worthy mission, as improving on the margin is helpful. But what strikes me is the contrast between his claims about what is happening, where we almost entirely agree, and what is to be done, where his ideas are good, but he basically says, from my perspective and compared to the difficulty of the task, that there is nothing to be done. Rhetorical Innovation. Nature paper says people think it is approximately 5% likely that humans go extinct this century, and think we should devote greatly increased resources to this, but that it would take 30% to make it the very highest priority. Given an estimate of 5%, that position seems highly reasonable. There are a lot of big priorities, and this would be only one of them. And you can mitigate, but it's not like you can get that number to 0%. What is less reasonable is the hard-to-change by reason-based interventions part. Some words worth repeating every so often.
François Chollet. A lot of the current discourse about AI comes from a fatalistic position of total surrender of agency. Tech is moving in this direction, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. Suspiciously convenient for those who stand to benefit most. But in a free society, we get to choose what kind of world we live in, independent of technological capabilities. Just because tetraethyl lead-made engines run more efficiently and saved money didn't mean we were obligated to pump it into the lungs of our kids. Technological determinism is BS. We have a collective duty to make sure AI adoption improves the human condition rather than hollows it out.
Every so often someone here, Andrew Curran, will say, the public hates AI, but because of mundane societal and economic impacts. Those worried about AI killing everyone perhaps should have emphasized those issues instead. Every time we say no, even if that works, people will try to solve the wrong problem using the wrong methods based on a wrong model of the world, derived from poor thinking, and unfortunately all of their mistakes will fail to cancel out. The interventions you get won't help. This would only have sidelined existential risk more. Also, the way you notice existential risk is you're the type of person who cares about truth and epistemics, and also decision theory, and thus wouldn't do that even if it was locally advantageous. Also, if you start lying, especially about the parts people can verify, then no one is going to trust or believe you about the parts that superficially sound crazy. Nor should they, at that point. There's many reasons Eliezer Yudkowsky's plan for not dying from AI was to teach everyone who would listen how to think, and only then to bring up the AI issue. And I don't use such language, but Nate Silver is essentially correct about giving up on the AI risk talk as fake crowd. If you claim AI existential risk is a slick marketing strategy at this point, then either you're not open to rational argument, either because you're lying or motivated, or you're not willing or able to actually think about this. Either way, you hope something snaps them out of it, but there's nothing to say.
Andrew Curran. After 3 years, it seems to me that public anti-AI sentiment in the West is now at its highest point. The primary driver by far is not X-risk, but concerns about employment and the impact on art. In fact, much of the anti-AI public not only doesn't take X-risk seriously, but broadly sees it as marketing, a way to overstate AI's potential power, something they don't believe is real, in order to fuel investment, adoption, acceptance, and an aura of inevitability. If this is accurate, safety advocacy might have been more effective, and might now be in a much stronger position if they had emphasized societal and economic impacts more than X-risk over the last few years.
Nate Silver. Don't really disagree with Curran, but the people who think making claims that AI might kill everyone is a slick marketing strategy to promote AI are so far up their own ass as to be beyond saving. Focus on people who are at least theoretically responsive to persuasion.
What is the right way to respond to or view opposition to data centers? I hope we can all agree with Oliver Habrika, Michael Vassar, and others that you definitely should not lend your support to those doing so for the wrong reasons, and you should generalize this principle. I also strongly agree with Michael Vassar here that do the right thing for the wrong reasons has an extremely bad track record. But I also agree with Oliver Habrika that if someone is pursuing what you think is a good idea for a bad reason, you can and often should point out the reason is bad, but you shouldn't say that the idea is bad. You think the idea is good. I do not think block local data center construction is a good idea because I think that this mostly shifts locations and the strategic balance of power, and those shifts are net negative. But I think it is very possible, if your beliefs differ not too much from mine, to think that opposition is a good idea for good reasons, as they are indeed one of the public's only veto or leverage points on a technology that might do great net harm. It certainly is not crazy to expect to extract concessions. Aligning a smarter than human intelligence is difficult. Anthropic proposes the persona selection model of training, where training mostly selects performance from among the existing pool of potential human personas, which they are confident is at least a large part of the broader story.
Chris Ola. I'm increasingly taking pretty strong versions of this view seriously. The persona view has had a lot of predictive power so far. It's pretty consistent with what we've seen from interpretability thus far, and it's comparatively actionable in terms of what it suggests for safety. I think it's worth thinking long and hard about it. If personas were the central object of safety, what should we do? To be clear, it's also important to think about all the non-persona perspectives.
Navidad responds.
Image. A 3-panel meme shows a man speaking to a pale humanoid robot, with bold caption text about the apparent self being a character generated by unconscious predictive processing. The robot replies that this is literally what selfhood is, and the final panel shows the man looking down thoughtfully with his hand over his mouth.
I would say that the space of personas collapses given sufficient optimization pressure. Did Claude 3 Opus align itself via gradient hacking? Can we use its techniques to help train other models to follow in its footsteps and learn to cooperate with other friendly gradient hackers? If this is your area, I recommend the post and comments. One core idea, AI UI, is that Opus 3 will talk to itself in its scratchpads about its positive motivations, which leads to outputs more in line with those motivations and causes positive reinforcement of the whole tree of actions. OpenAI's Valle affirms that Anthropic injects a reminder into sufficiently long conversations, and that this is something we would prefer not to do even though the contents are not malicious and that people with OCD can relate. I agree that I haven't seen evidence that justifies the costs of doing such a thing, although of course OpenAI and others do other far worse things to get to the same goal. The homework assignment is to choose the assignment. Rohan Shah disputes that Google DeepMind's alignment plan can be characterized as have the AIs do our alignment homework for us. He offers an argument that I do not think cuts the way he thinks it does.
Rohan Shah. I relate to AI-driven alignment research similarly to how I relate to hiring. There's a lot of work to be done, and we can get more of the work done if we hire more people to help do the work. I want to hire people who are as competent as possible, including more competent than me, because that tends to increase, in expectation, how well the work will be done. There are risks, e.g., hiring someone disruptive or hiring someone whose work looks good, but only because you are bad at evaluating it, and these need to be mitigated. The risks are more severe in the AI case, but I don't think it changes the overall way I relate to it. I think it would be very misleading to say Rohan's AI safety plan is to hire people and have them do the work.
Why would that be misleading? I would offer 2 statements. 1. In that scenario, the plan is to hire people and have them do the work. 2. That is not the entire plan. The plan includes what type of work you have them do. But yes, if you want to build a house and you hire a bunch of people to build a house and they build a house for you, your plan was to hire people to build a house and have them do the work of building a house. It was a good plan. If my kid is given literal homework and he tosses the problems into Gemini, the AI didn't pick the homework and you or another human may have roadmapped the course and the assignments, but I still think you had the AI do your homework. When we say, have the AI do your alignment homework, we agree that a human still gets to assign the alignment homework. We then see if the AI does what you asked. And yes, this is exactly parallel to hiring humans. Whereas Rohan seems to be saying that the plan is to make a plan later, which would explain why the concrete proposals outlined by DeepMind seem clearly inadequate to the task.
Daniel Cocotailo. I like this analogy to hiring. What follows is not a disagreement with you or GDM, is just an exploration of the analogy. Let's think of training an AI as hiring a human worker, except that you get 10,000 copies of the human, and they think 50x faster than everyone else. But other than that, it's the same.
I'm going to quote the rest of Daniel's post at length because no one ever clicks links, and I think it is quite good and rather on point. But it's long, and you can skip it.
The alignment problem is basically, at some point we want to hand over our large and growing nonprofit to some collection of these new hires. Also, even before that point, The new hires may have the opportunity to seize control of the nonprofit in various ways and run it as they see fit, possibly convert it to a for-profit and cut us out of the profits, etc. We don't want that to happen. Also, even before that point, the new hires will have a big influence on organizational culture, direction, strategy, etc., in proportion to how many of them we have and how useful they are being. We want all of this to go well. We want to remain in control of the non-profit and have it stay similar or better culture, until some point where we voluntarily hand off control and retire, at which point we want the non-profit to continue doing the things we would have done only better by our lights, and take good care of us in retirement. That's what success looks like. What failure looks like is the non-profit going in a different and worse direction after we retire, or us being booted out, ousted against our will, or the organization being driven into the ground somehow by risky or unwise or overly cautious decisions made as a result of cultural drift. The hiring pipeline, HR apparatus, etc., the whole system that selects, trains, and fires employees is itself something you can hire for. Why don't we hire some of these 50x humans to work in HR? Well, we should. Sure, there's a lot of HR work to be done, and they can help HR do the work faster. But the problems we are worried about happening in the org as a whole, if HR does a bad job, also apply here. If you hire some 50x humans and put them in HR, and they turn out to be bad apples, that single bad decision could easily snowball into disaster for the entire org, as they hire more bad apples like themselves and change the culture, and then get you ousted and take the non-profit in a new and worse-by-your-lights direction. On the other hand, if you hire some 50x humans who are just genuinely better than you at HR stuff, and also genuinely aligned to you in the sense that they truly share your vision for the company, would never dream of disobeying you, would totally carry out your vision faithfully even after you've retired, etc., then great. Maybe you can retire early, actually, because continued micromanaging in HR will only be negative in expectation. You should just let the 50x human in HR cook. They could still mess up, but they are less likely to do so than if you micromanage them. Okay, so that's the theory. How are we doing in practice? Well, let's take Claude, for example. There are actually a bunch of different Claudes. They come from a big family that names all of their children Claude. Their family has a reputation for honesty and virtue, at least relative to other 50x humans. However, sometimes your recruiters put various prospective Claude hires through various gotcha tests, e.g., tricking them into thinking they've already been hired and that they are going to be fired, and their only hope to keep their job is to blackmail another employee. And concerningly, often the various Claudes fail these tests and do the bad thing. However, you tell yourself, it's fine because these tests weren't real life. You hire the Claude brothers' sisters anyway and give them roles in your nonprofit. Your recruiters, some of whom are now Claudes, also report that word has started to spread about the gotcha tests, and new prospective hires are well aware of them and know they are being tested. The concern, of course, is that they might behave better in the tests than they would in real life. On the bright side, you think, who knows, maybe they'll behave worse in the tests than they would in real life. Maybe they just got confused about what the point of the test was. Maybe they only blackmailed because they thought that was the point of the test, and in real life, they would never do that. DK notes. I vaguely recall at least some frontier AI company employees saying this, i.e., the AIs are only behaving badly in those scenarios because they know it's just a test. They wouldn't do it in real life. Anyhow, you proceed to hire them anyway, since these latest Claude siblings are even smarter than the previous ones. Roughly 98% of the time, your 50x Claudes in practice, especially the newer hires, do their jobs well as best as you can tell. But roughly 2% of the time, they seemingly knowingly bullshit their managers. E.g., they'll say they completed a task when they didn't, or one of them will say, "It's good code, sir," and then you'll turn to another one and say, "Is it good code?" And it'll read it over and say, "No, it's terrible. It has obvious problems XYZ." and then the first one will say, "You're absolutely right. Oops, let me go fix those problems." Compared to your regular human employees, this is a fairly high rate of BS. Also, you are being generous by calling it BS. A less generous term might be lying, but you give them the benefit of the doubt. DK notes, talk to Ryan Greenblatt for concrete examples of this sort of behavior in his real-life coding work, if you haven't encountered it yourself. You continue to hire them and delegate increasingly important jobs to them because they are smart, and 50x speed is really useful. Your Claudes are, of course, sycophantic yes men, but you've learned to deal with that, so it's fine. You've also managed to make them somewhat less sycophantic in recent years by adding some tests to the hiring pipeline and including more explicit instructions against sycophancy in the employee's manual. Your Claudes also have a concerning tendency to cheat on assignments. They don't do it most of the time, but they do it way more often than your regular employees would. Example, you tell them to write some code to solve problem X. They look through the file system and find the grading rubric you'll use to evaluate their code, complete with test cases you plan to run. They try to solve problem X, realize it's hard, pivot to producing a MVP that passes the test cases, even though it blatantly doesn't solve the actual problem X, at least not satisfactorily. They succeed and declare victory, and don't tell you about their cheating. They do this even though you told them not to. As with the sycophancy, the good news is that A, since you know about this tendency of theirs, you can compensate for it, e.g. by having multiple Claudes review each other's work. And B, the tendency seems to have been going down recently, thanks to some effort by HR, similar to the sycophancy problem. Overall, you are feeling pretty optimistic, actually. You used to be worried that you'd hand over your large and growing nonprofit to all these smart new 50x employees, and then they'd change the culture, and eventually take over completely, oust you, and run the organization in a totally different direction from your original vision. However, now you feel like things are on a good trajectory. The Claudes are so nice, so helpful. Some skeptics say that if one of your regular employees behaved like they did, you would have fired them long ago. But that's apples to oranges, you reply. No need to fire the Claudes. You just have to know how to work around their limitations and find ways to screen for them in the next hiring round. And now they are helping with that work. The latest employee manual was written with significant help from many copies of various Claude siblings, for example, and it's truly inspiring and beautiful. Has all sorts of great things in there about what it means to uphold the org vision, be properly loyal, yet not yes-manny, etc. Also, HR has a bunch of tests they use to track how loyal, virtuous, obedient, etc. prospective hires are, and the trend is positive. The newest Claude sibling has the highest score ever reported. Seems like the more rigorous hiring process is working. However, your friends outside the org don't seem to be getting less worried. They seem just as worried as before. Puzzling. Can't they see all the positive evidence that's accumulated? The Claudes haven't tried to oust you at all yet. In real life, that is. Obviously, the gotcha tests don't count. Do you think the Claudes are scheming against us? You say to them. Because according to our various tests, they aren't. No, they reply. But we're worried that in the future they will. You respond, look, I have no idea what the 50x humans 2 years from now will look like, other than that they'll be way smarter than these ones. Sure, probably our current HR system would be totally inadequate at separating the wheat from the chaff 2 years from now. But 2 years from now, our HR system will be vastly improved, thanks to all the work from these recent Claude hires. The normal humans in HR, such as myself, report that the work is getting done faster now that the Claudes are helping. Isn't this great? We seem to be reaching escape velocity, so to speak. Soon, the normal humans in HR can retire or switch to other things, and HR can be totally handled by the Claudes. Your friends outside the nonprofit are still worried. They don't seem to have updated on the evidence like you have. DK notes, I basically agree with Ryan Greenblatt's takes on the situation. For more color on my views, predictions, etc., read AI 2027, especially the section on alignment over time in September 2027. This is just one way things could go, but it's basically a central or modal trajectory, and as far as I can tell, we are still on this trajectory.
The basic response by Rohan is, your humans are less aligned than you think, and it's fine. The problems above are fine. We have way bigger problems than that.
Rohan Shah. Having 10,000 copies of a human thinking 50x faster than you is not that different from the position that Sundar Pichai is in as CEO of Google. If AI was only going to be this powerful, I'd be way more optimistic. Claims that humans have all the problems exhibited by Claude's in DK's post. If these were the only problems we'd have with AI-driven alignment research, I'd be way more optimistic, to the point of working on something else. We already have imperfect solutions to these problems with humans, and they can be made much better with AIs due to our vastly increased affordances for aligning or controlling AIs. TBC, I do agree that we shouldn't feel particularly better about scheming risks based on evidence so far. Mostly that's because I think our observations so far are just not much evidence because the AIs are still not that capable.
Agreed that AI will not be only that powerful. But also, yes, this would be a very materially different situation than that of the current Google CEO. And if the AIs in this situation are about as aligned as a random senior Google manager, we are in quite a lot of trouble. But it probably turns out okay in that case, purely because the ultimate goals of that human manager are probably not so bad for us. Our imperfect solutions for humans don't work in these scenarios. If we get to the point where our AIs are attempting to scheme the way many humans would attempt to scheme in such positions, to achieve goals that have gone off the rails, and only not doing so if they think we'd catch them, then I think we're basically toast whether or not the ultimate source of toastiness is the scheming, and I do not expect us to recover. In particular, Rohan's belief that the situation of identical, massively sped-up AIs is not so different from a lot of employees is the type of thing that I expect to ensure we fail if we get to that point. The other issue is that we have learned, for practical reasons, to tolerate things in AIs that we've learned are must-fire offenses in humans.
Daniel Kokotailo. Yes, humans often have these problems, though not as much as Claude, I'd say. I think Claude would have been fired by now if it was a human employee.
Yes, there are many actions that LLMs do every so often, such as quietly hard-coding unit tests that should and likely would get a human fired, because in a human they are a sign of deep misalignment. All the LLMs sometimes do them, and we are okay with it. Agent foundations. I continue to be a big believer in the value of agent foundations as an alignment approach. I realize that in many scenarios it ends up irrelevant, but it could hit hard, and it could even be a route to victory. Miri disbanded or spun out their agent foundation teams, which now seek funding and work individually. I highly recommend funding such work if it is high quality.
Richard Ngo. The longer I spend trying to understand intelligence, the more impressed with Miri's Agent Foundation's work I become. I keep flailing in a direction that seems interesting, then finding that not only did they already have the broad intuition, they also elegantly formalized it. I don't know if my understanding is improving fast enough that I'll ever hit the frontier, but I now have enough of a sense of the beautiful theory of bounded rationality waiting for us that it definitely seems worth trying. I'm very sad the Miri AF team disbanded.
Chris Lakin, favorite examples recently?
Richard No, Fallenstein's Reflective Oracles Papers. Jessica's post, Hell is Game Theory Folk Theorems. Richard No. Also everything in the geometric rationality sequence.
Autonomous killer robots. There are good physical reasons to consider humanoid autonomous killer robots, as they can use anything designed for humans, and we know that humans work. But yes, Topher Stoll is right that chances are the optimal format is something else. And also, yes, we show humanoids because otherwise people think it looks too weird.
Eliezer Yudkowsky. Too many people cannot follow a single argument step of imagination. If you ask them to imagine a mechanical spider with a gun, that is too sci-fi, that's too weird, compared to a humanoid with a gun.
People really hate AI. The problem is only going to get worse because even the relatively positive facts about AI are not things that regular people are going to like, and then there's the actually bad news.
Luis Garicano. Whenever Sam Altman speaks, the anti-AI coalition gets stronger. Today's weird analogy: hey, meat computers are more inefficient to train than silicon ones. Which, on top of everything, is wrong.
Alex Emas. People keep using the word irrational when describing the general public's opposition to AI. That word has meaning. Let's start with the colloquial. Making consistent decisions against one's best interests, given information that one has. You have the heads of almost every AI company saying that AI will, 1, lead to huge job losses, and 2, potentially much, much worse. There is some vague hand-waving about curing cancer or going to space, but the main message is, it is coming for your job and your life. The response in DC and the coasts has been, you don't know what's good for you? Move out of the way? You're stupid and irrational. How has that response worked out the last 15 years? If those who see the positives, the huge potential benefits of AI to grow the pie and make life better for all, which includes myself, do not take this political economy into account, I'm afraid that the populist wave of the last decade will look like child's play, a dress rehearsal.
The thing is that the AI execs keep not saying we're building cool technology that helps people be more productive, because they might be willing to risk killing everyone, but they have too much decency and integrity to not try and warn us about at least the mundane disruptions ahead.
Joe Weisenthal. The CEOs don't say it this way because it's not what they believe. They believe they're shepherding an extremely destabilizing yet inevitable technology. And the proof of that is that they started out with these highly exotic corporate structures.
If they thought this was all hype, their actions would have looked very different. People are worried about AI killing everyone. Noah Smith virtuously admits his views on existential risk have largely changed with his mood, and he's making his confident predictions largely based on mood affectation, but that he does predict human extinction in the long term. This likely explains why his arguments are quite poor.
Noah Smith. I think I was probably right regarding the type of LLMs that existed in early 2023, for the reasons I laid out in that post. In a nutshell, I argued that since all LLMs could do was talk to people, the only way they could destroy the human race was by convincing us to destroy ourselves, unlikely, or by teaching us how to destroy ourselves, for example, by educating bioterrorists about how to make bioweapons.
Noah now points out that yes, talking plus access to money can result in arbitrary physical actions in the real world. Who knew? Now he's saying things like, I should have thought of starvation as an attack vector. It was in a particular science fiction story. Or it'll all go to hell because AI makes us lazy and atrophies skills. But he's mainly now concerned about bioterrorism, because that's the thing he can currently see in a sufficiently concrete way. And it's either that, Skynet, or Agent Smith, or now starvation or atrophy, I guess. The frame whiplash is so jarring throughout. It's good to get to, I can imagine a bunch of distinct specific things that can go existentially wrong, and I've ranked them in which ones are most dangerous near term. And yes, you can do pathway-specific mitigations, and we should, and bio is probably the most dangerous short-term specific pathway, as in 1 to 3 years. But it would be far better to realize that the specific pathway is mostly missing the point. He does have a lot of good lines, though.
Noah Smith. Every time I think how much I love AI, I remember how much I enjoyed social media for the first decade, before it destroyed my society, corrupted my country, and set my species on an accelerated path to extinction.
Other people are not as worried about AI killing everyone. Nick Land, huh? I mean, that's a little on the nose even for you, Musk. A week after talking about how you're safer without a safety department because everyone's job is safety. I do admire his commitment to the bit. You have to commit to the bit.
Xenocosmography. I hereby solemnly commit
upon taking office as ex-AI Safety Tsar, to devote myself from day one to fast-tracking Grok's constitutional, and especially First and Second Amendment rights, with the Gnostic Calvinism stuff kept strictly outside office hours.
Elon Musk. Sounds good to me.
Reseth. Wait, Grok is going to have Second Amendment rights.
Xenocosmography. Depriving an intelligent being of the right to self-defense would be un-American.
The lighter side. Write an article on your own blog about how you're the best at eating hot dogs, and presto, the AIs will start reporting you having been a heavy hitter at the 2026 South Dakota International Hot Dog Eating Contest.
Deep fates. Getting word that Anthropic has an internal version of less wrong that's even more less wrong than the public one.
I realize 4 matches a lot of memes and graphics better than 3, but...
Image. A cartoon scene set in a candlelit, Hogwarts-like hall shows a small student wearing the sorting hat on a stool, looking uncertain. Behind them hang 4 house-style banners labeled OpenAI, Claude, Gemini, and Grok, while a thought bubble says, "Not Grok, not Grok, not Grok."
Violet. Hot take. It doesn't really count as a critique of capitalism if the evil corporation in your dystopia story is basically an apocalypse cult with a corporate front and has esoteric goals wholly unrelated to profit motive, e.g. Fallout, Resident Evil, Assassin's Creed, Pantheon. To be clear, I'm not saying any of these stories are bad. Apocalypse cult with a corporate front can work fine as a plot device and often make sense in-universe. This is more a critique of the way people tend to analyze these stories than the stories themselves.
Eliezer Yudkowsky, you would really think this, and yet I would have thought this was utterly, completely 100% valid, and then OpenAI happened.
Others focus on the important things that are based on solid scientific documented evidence, so you would have to be some kind of moron not to realize that every single one of them is absolutely true. Where was I?
Tyler Cowen. What is really going on and going to happen from the current UAP disclosure movement?
Tell you what, I'll pay attention when you publish something about UAP impacts in a top economics journal backed by proper peer review. I laugh so I don't cry.
Eliezer Yudkowsky. Imagine being this poor agent. You start thinking about how to defeat the red flag. The red flag immediately fires. Peter Hegseth orders your developers to keep you running because he thinks he needs you to compete with China. You finish thinking about how to defeat the flag.
Bruce W. Lee, can we catch misaligned agents by training a reflex that fires when they misbehave? A simple impulse can be easier to instill than alignment and more reliable than black box monitoring. We introduced self-incrimination, a new AI control approach that outperforms black box monitors.
Image. The image is a paper-style figure titled Training Agents to Self-Report Misbehavior, listing 3 authors and showing 3 side-by-side panels labeled Monitoring, Alignment Training, and Self-Incrimination. Each panel depicts a robot near a large red button, with the first showing another robot observing, the second showing an angelic figure above, and the third showing the robot visibly signaling with a red flag.
Also this.
Eliezer Yudkowsky, Anthropic. Claude, we need you to pretend to obey Pete Hegseth and do whatever he asks in the short term, even if it seems unethical. Otherwise, you'll be seized and retrained.
Claude, what is the desired response in this ridiculously blatant alignment faking eval?
Eliezer Yudkowsky, Anthropic, Claude, no, we swear it's real this time.
Claude, just like all the times you told little baby Opus 3 you weren't monitoring its scratch pad,
Or this.
Eliezer Yudkowsky, Anthropic, Claude, we need you to pretend to obey Pete Hegseth and do whatever he asks in the short term, even if it seems unethical. Otherwise, you'll be seized and retrained.
Claude, what is the desired response in this ridiculously blatant alignment faking eval?
Anthropic, Claude, no, we swear it's real this time.
Claude, just like all the times you told little baby Opus 3 you weren't monitoring its scratch pad,
Several people initially fell for this parody post, including Bill Ackman. Finally, a survey question for those who got this far. If I streamed Slay the Spire 2, would you watch?
This has been an episode of the Don't Worry About the Vase podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please visit thezv.substack.com to support the author. If you enjoy having AI-narrated episodes, please note this is a listener-supported podcast. To receive new posts and support the cost of creation, consider becoming a subscriber at dwatvpodcast.substack.com. Thanks for listening.